Okay, mic test 1 2 1 2, mic test.
So we're looking now to the market on open imbalance. So the S&P 500, 200 million to the sell side, Nasdaq 100 is 10 million to the sell side, a Dow 30, 24 million to the sell side, a Mag 7 just 2 million to sell.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Pro Trade Room Plus, the Jolts report. Also welcome all our friends on YouTube that are watching our stream. My name is Lee Goldstein, Trading Director at 10 Minute Trades. Please remember all the trades we discuss are for educational purposes. It is possible to lose money trading futures. I am not a financial advisor, so trade carefully, please. All right, let me figure out where I want to put my webcam. And there's a bit of extra news today. We've got some durable news, some factory orders, vehicle sales, and it doesn't so much change as my thinking about what I would do on the Jolts report. So I think we need to talk about the behavior of it and what's been going on. And then also, I always get a lot of emails. I may have marked on the weekly schedule that there was a DMM. So I want to check. I think I said yes. Yeah, I did, and there isn't. I apologize. That was my little error there. There is no DMM for the Jolts report. So people ask why. Why do some reports have a DMM and other reports don't? So it's not really that complicated. First off, we have a history. All right. So there are reports that they just go back in time. When the company was started, there were DMMs, and many of those reports, they keep their DMMs. Some of them, if a report stops performing and it never comes back, and it just doesn't ever report and perform well again, then it can lose the DMM. If the setting changes so radically, it can lose the DMM, and we need sometimes to create new ones. Um, then you have a situation like Jolts. There is no DMM for Jolts because this particular report has not been trading in a consistent way that allows for a DMM to be created. So what does that mean? It means very simply that if you look at the way Jolts has traded over the past year and what it's been trading with, last month Jolts traded with ISM Manufacturing. In May, it traded by itself. In March, it traded by itself. We had two reports where it traded by itself, and then you have to go back to last year in October to find another time that the Jolts traded by itself. So it's very difficult to have a DMM if a report doesn't trade by itself. It's just that simple. In January, it traded with CB Consumer Confidence. There were two Jolts in January, actually, one in the very beginning of the month, one at the end. And the beginning of the month was ISM Manufacturing. December, it was ISM Services. November, it was Manufacturing. So what do? Um, it's a report that you have extra risk because it's a little bit of a coin toss. What you do is you try to look at the maximum amount of information to try and help you to make an intelligent trade, an intelligent setup. In the past, trading in May, from going back into
People think
May,
it's time
you
to
got to go back
stop.
to May to
Welcome.
find one of the recent Jolts reports. Recent, it's almost a year ago. It's a year ago, to find how Jolts was trading. In May, it was pretty much, not pretty much, it was by itself. We had a gold set up with a 10 bracket and a 12 stop. And I've also traded bonds on this report. So back in May, watching what it did, it had one of the best Jolts reports that we've had in recent memory. And it's a shame, but we haven't had a Jolts report that has moved this well since. All right. May was a phenomenal setup. We made over $1,000 on Jolts and on gold, and bonds had a really nice move as well. But you've got to look at what's been going on. That was the last great Jolts report. Um, I believe that Jolts has been adding whippy behavior to reports that have not whipped recently so much. August. Now, this happens to be a video within a video, so I wasn't planning on showing August. August was a small profit on Jolts, very small move, smaller than usual. On bonds, pretty good on gold. Okay, pretty good move on gold. But I was actually looking to show October on this one. So in October, it was by itself, and we've been doing gold and bonds. We've done some ES on this report. That's been the way that we've been trading it. There was a time when I truly felt that Jolts was really close to being a family money trade, even though it didn't have a DMM. And I've made a DMM in the past just so people had a trade setup that they could work with. But it was, it's still an inconsistent, very difficult report to create a DMM for because, as I've said, it doesn't have a consistent way that it trades. One thing we know is it moves the gold market, it moves the bond market, it moves the ES, it moves the indexes. My feeling today is if you look at Jolts in May last month, when it traded with ISM, we had a bracket of 12 and a stop of 20, and the stop of 20 is ISM related. And we also traded bonds. And in May, let's take a look. Bonds failed to follow through, and reversed direction and created a stop out. Okay. Gold had a winning move. It was not a phenomenal move, but it was a winning move. It did change direction, but it would have been a winner on gold. But remember, it wasn't just Jolts. It was Jolts and ISM. And my gut feeling, looking at Jolts alone in April, let's take a look at April. Now, in April, it's very much like today. We have the extra reports, all right? Factory, factory orders, vehicle sales. Not everything is the same, but it does have some of those extra reports today. So Jolts in April, bonds ES on the left, gold on the right. ES was a whip, did not work, and gold quite difficult as well. All right, that's Jolts by itself, had a pretty whippy trade. Bonds on the far right chart actually looked a little better than anything. All right, watching bonds on the right. Watching the move here on bonds. The news comes out, bonds go down. Not an unbelievable move, but decent. Decent. Looks like it's going to test the low. Nevertheless, see the pullback there. So you had to get your profit pretty quick. You don't want to be too greedy. Right now, you don't want to be too greedy on Jolts. There's definite signs of whippiness in the report. And I think there's a couple of different approaches that you can take. I always think in my gut that bonds are, in many ways, one of the safest ways to trade because liquidity is often the best. So bonds are less prone to crazy, out of control whipsaws. Okay. On a report like this, where there's a lot of coin toss elements today, and there's nothing we can do about it, it's not anybody's fault. It's no one's fault that Jolts has traded inconsistently. It's just the way it's been trading. So my gut feeling is in the cash accounts, I like to trade bonds. In other words, I want to trade the report because I feel it has the potential for nice profits because we know it has the potential to move very well. So it's a report I'd like to trade, but I'd like to trade it with the utmost of care because of the elements that we have to deal with. Hasn't traded by itself, has possibly created some whip in its other trades with other news. Um, that's my thinking. It could be one of those reports that it might be appropriate to trade one contract on gold and go for a nice sized target, like some people did yesterday on ISM. And if you get that excellent move, use the feature in the software. Let me show you. So let's say you don't want to trade
European oil
a
and
lot of
gas
risk. You
stocks
want
on
to
track
really
for their
reduce your risk.
biggest daily drop since May
So
of
you can
last year.
trade one contract on a breakout. And I have a template that I'm going to load. It'll just save a tiny bit of time. Let me see if I have it. See if it works. Okay. So it didn't. So let me just create the trade. So on gold, we've got 9, 59. 59 is the trigger. I would use a 12 bracket on gold. So if you were interested in trading one contract, I would consider position size 1 is a 1. The target could be anywhere between 20 and 40 ticks, right? So let's say, for argument's sake, you choose something between 28 and 32 ticks. The stop is 15, okay? And the feature in the software that you want to use is if the market moves, and you don't want to be too greedy, let's say 20 ticks, then move your stop to break even plus 15. So if you get a decent move, it's not, and it doesn't hit your full target, which is above 30, for instance, or in the high 20s. But if you get a decent move, you can try to grab 15 ticks of that by using that feature in the software. If the market moves 20 ticks, the stop's going to go to break even plus 15. Okay. So you can modify that. You could, use a target of 25 ticks, for instance, and then you could still use if the market goes, I would probably use if the market goes 16 ticks or so, and I'd move my stop to 12, something of that sort. That's how I would consider trading it, okay, with one contract. I'm going to trade it with two in my Top Step account. I'm going to take the risk that Jolts is going to return to its glory of last year. Maybe I'm making a drastic error. I'm thinking about it as I'm creating this setup right now. I think there's always a real possibility this report could move very well. And because of the way it's been behaving, I would use my target one stop move. Okay. The stop is 15. So I'm triggering at 9:59:59, a bracket of 12, a stop of 15. And then targets are anywhere between 8 and 40-ish, I think is well within reasonable. I'm doing less. I'm not being greedy. And then I'm making sure that my account, I'm going to check my brackets. So I'll put my charts on sim. I'm going to label my trade. That's my gold breakout. Jolts. Oops. All right, so we've got a setup. I'm going to set the time to 0. Look at my brackets.
Order submitted.
Okay, that's
Order
a
canceled.
fairly decent sized bracket. Put my time back to normal. 9:59:59. Put my charts and my account on my trading account, Top Step. Apply it and OK it, and then put my charts on Top Step. Okay, so now my trade for gold is ready. Now the markets are somewhat volatile because they're close to the open. Gold made a low, pulled off the low, or it almost made a new low. It pulled off that low. And then on bonds in my regular account, I have a bracket of 6, targets of 6 and 15 with a stop of 10. That's how I would trade bonds. I would do the break even. Break even minus a couple of ticks. Make sure it's labeled bond breakout, ZN breakout. And that's what I'm looking to do with bonds. I'll take a look at the bracket, the width of the bracket, like we always do.
Order submitted.
A little bit wide there.
Order canceled.
And then I'll put the time back to 9:59:58 on the trigger. Bracket of 6,
So
stop
in
of
10 minutes
10.
time now, at the top of the hour, we see the release of
Targets
the US
anywhere
Jolts
between
job
6
openings
and
for the month of
18
April.
is within reason,
Forecast
I think.
8.35 million on the prior 8.488 million, with
Putting
a
my
range of
charts on my
8.6 to 8.1 million
correct
expected.
trading
We
account.
also see the US factory orders
Put
month over
the
month,
software on that,
forecast
and
of
then the charts have to
0.6% on the
match.
prior
Triple check
1.6%, with
that
a
I
range of
changed my
0.8 to
time.
0.3%
Okay, and we're
expected.
looking good.
US durable goods revised for
We've got a
April,
few minutes to
forecast of
go.
0.7% on the prior 0.7%, and the core durable
So
goods revised,
there
forecast
is
of
some extra news
0.4%,
today.
prior
I'm using
0.4%.
a bracket of 6. I'm using a bracket of 6. So check your time sync. Everybody remembers how you check your time sync. For folks that are new, we go to the website Time Is to check our time sync, time.is. And we also supply a free couple of free programs. If your computer does not sync easily, there are software programs. They're in the room drive in the trade room. We have a folder in the trade room where people can download some programs that they need and that we use. For what it's worth, there's a VWAP, a free NinjaTrader VWAP in there. There's a couple of classes in there. So Jolts in March, let's take a look. It traded with the Bank of Canada, obviously a completely different report. Could there be contagion from the Bank of Canada? I suppose that's a trade that could affect gold and US bonds, right? It certainly is a little bit of a outlier. So we had gold on the right, bonds on the left, Canada somewhere. I don't even think I was looking at Canada. Well, that was 15 minutes ago. So I don't think it really would have any effect. And you could see in March, not a very dramatic move on bonds. Gold had a whippy kind of move. Just not a very impactful move in general in March, which is pretty unusual for Jolts. That was a pretty small move for this event. So anything can happen, obviously, with trading. Anything can happen. We could get a move that we don't expect. We could get a perfect move. It's like I said, we do have a couple of elephants in the room. We've got this Dalid Fed PCE that I've never seen trade with Jolts before. Factory orders. Market pays attention somewhat to factory orders. So it's one of the reasons why I was saying possibly a one contract gold trade might not be a bad choice. And it might be an interesting trade to set up an after the trade reversal. Remember, all you need for a reversal is a position, a target, and a stop. So I'm considering a after the news gold, see if there's anything that happens there. And you could call it after the news, you could call it reversal. Obviously it's up to you what you call it. When you enable the reversal setup, you get your buttons and you can enter a trade instantly.
It's been 5 minutes time now at the top
By
of the hour.
pressing
We
those
see the
buttons,
release of the
instant
US
long or
jobs job
instant
openings for
short.
the month of April. So the forecast is 8.35 million
So
on
let
the
me show
prior
you one more
8.488 million, with a range of
jolt. So
8.6
in
to 8.1
January,
million
jolts
expected.
traded with
Factory orders month
consumer
over month for
confidence.
April.
Now,
Forecast
consumer confidence
0.6% on the prior 1.6%,
has been
with
a
a
pretty
range
good
of
breakout trade.
0.8% to 0.3% expected. US durable goods revised, forecast to
As you can see
0.7%
from the
on the prior
DMM,
0.7%, and core durable goods,
it's
forecast
been trading pretty
0.4% on
well
the prior
as of last year
0.4%.
into the beginning of this year at the time of this particular JOLTS report. But there's definite contagion when consumer confidence and JOLTS trade together. You're not going to get necessarily the same reaction that you'd get from Jolts by itself or consumer confidence by itself. That particular trade was a bad whipsaw. All right. And that was the first bad whipsaw on Jolts. Bad whipsaw meaning a very quick stop. Nothing could have fixed it. Overall, there's been some mediocre moves. There's been some great moves. It's definitely been inconsistent. There's no question. But we don't have a ton of reports where we could go boom, boom, boom. Here's one, here's one, here's one, here's one, all in a row where it traded by itself. That's the challenge. That's the challenge of Jolts. Now, gold definitely on the bearish side. If you look at the indicator, net change display, and put it on points, which is what gold is really calculated in, gold's down 26 bucks. Right at this moment, I'm not want to be mindful of the behavior of gold here. All right, so we're being patient, waiting. We have a couple of minutes, little more than a minute and a half. We'll have bonds on the left, gold on the right.
One minute remaining. I'll lead with US Jolts job
All right, 1
openings.
minute. Just watching. Remember, if you want to cancel a trade, you just uncheck the check. You just uncheck the check mark. If you decided you don't want to
10
trade.
seconds.
Order submitted. Order cancelled. Order submitted.
8.059 million, 8.059 million, that's lower than forecast, 8.35 million. Factory orders 0.7%, 0.7%, higher than forecast, 0.6%. Looking to the market, some
Okay, I'm
strength in the
moving my
S&P 500
stop
and
on
weakness in the
bonds.
dollar.
I'm gonna get,
Durable
come on.
goods revised at 0.6%, 0.6%, is lower than forecast,
I think I'm
0.7%. Core durable
probably
goods revised at
too
0.4%,
close on my
0.4%
targets
as
on
expected.
bonds.
Order
Too
filled.
much chop. Definite disaster on the breakout on top step. Bonds, I just grabbed a quick profit in the cash account, turning off.
So also noting the prior
But
revision
it
to
was
the
an
Jolts job
unsafe
openings. The
move
prior
on
was
gold
revised down to
in the top step
8.355 million
account.
from
That definitely could be
8.488 million.
related. Now that's a spurious, an order that doesn't exist, and I'm just going to reboot my platform real quick to take that away. And I think it's clear what happened. It just didn't do a safe move on gold. It's definitely one of the reasons I was saying about bonds and liquidity. Bonds and liquidity. Now you can still, we'll watch the video to analyze what happened here. So bonds
So the US 10-year
for
Treasury yields
for
fall after
my
the data,
platform
last at
was able to grab a little bit of
4.326%.
profit looking at the news. Factory orders look like they were higher than expected. Jolts was lower than expected, quite a bit lower than expected. The job openings were 8.05 million. They were expecting 8.37. Now, gold, maybe because of the volatility, the bracket was too small. And it's very interesting. Ravi made money on Apex with gold. I did not. I had a stop on Top Step. The reality of the prop accounts is their data feeds are not cash. They are not cash. They're not cash fills. So I'd be curious, Ravi, what was your fill? Now I don't know if my fill's going to show up there. Let me just reconnect. It will when I reconnect. Give me a second. Ravi, what was your fill on gold? 23.48. So I don't know what mine is at the moment. Let me see if I can see it. So it looks like my fill was the same. 23.48. Okay, let's take a look at the video and see what happened here. So bonds are now chopping, just hanging around pretty close to where we got out. The fill was pretty high up the candle. So, the fill was more than halfway up the candle, which ate some of the profit, unfortunately. Sander had a small profit on bonds. Okay. Roz, that was cash. Roz, that was cash. So gold cash, Roz in Kenya was able to make money. So did anyone else trade gold cash? Because you could see there is an absolute difference in trading a cash account than trading a prop account. Sometimes the prop accounts, the fills just are not as good. They can't handle the speed of the market all the time. That's what we've experienced. That's what we've experienced. Let me show you all the video. I don't think anything. Give me 1 second here. Let's take a look at the video. I'm curious. Just to avoid confusion, I'll leave the webcam where it was originally. So we get
Fed swaps pricing in a faster pace of 2024 rate cuts following the Jolts job
down to the
openings.
time of the trade. Watching the right side to see what happened on that. So what happened is it filled and pulled back. That's what stopped me out on my Top Step account. My stop wasn't big enough to survive the fill and the pullback down. Bonds, they didn't fill as fast as gold. Watching bonds on the left. Now it pushed up and then it kind of hung out, pushed up a little more. I moved my stop up. I was just very concerned it wasn't going to hit the target. But I wanted to, right there, my stop was on the wrong side of the market for an instant. That's what created that error, which actually worked in my favor because it left me in the trade. And then I just pulled my price down because it just appeared that bonds weren't pushing up. And actually, that wound up being okay. Bonds, a lot of times I'll get out too soon. In this particular case, bonds just were hanging around in that same area. And now they finally changed direction. Okay, so Raz used target one, a one position with gold. There's just no denying that trading gold cash and trading gold prop for us was two completely different results. So that will happen. It will happen sometimes. And that's one of the things you have to deal with. Cash, we just made a couple of ticks, not a lot of ticks. There wasn't a ton of profit in bonds initially. Now, I was saying that I think it's hard to remember to do it because we've been doing things so long the same way. We need to take a little more time before we start talking about the trade and look for the second event, because the second event was a change in direction. There was a possibility. Now, it didn't quite get to the VWAP, so it was not so easy, but we did have some help from the squeeze, and we did have some help for bonds that made a new high and then failed eventually and started to push down. So there was a possible opportunity for a trade after the news, and that's what I'm going to try as time goes on to pay more attention to. So I'm happy to say it looks like most people made money. I'm not seeing any losses. Now, maybe folks aren't typing in if they lost. Now, Calvin, you didn't lose money on the NQ. It just gave you an error, which is no surprise. It was probably a very fast move on the NQ, would be my guess. It was, Jolts is very fast. It's very fast. NQ, I mean, it looks like a pretty decent trading candle. We know the history of the NQ. The speed can be troublesome for trading. The ES looks like it had exact same move. It looks like the exact same chart. And I would bet the euro looks similar, a little bit less on the up wick, maybe a little bit stronger direct up move on the euro. But on this type of trade, there are many instruments that are tradable. Steve, what happened? What happened on the close button? I saw you say that before. I wanted to ask you. What happened on your trade? Was up 210 and you couldn't get out fast enough. You couldn't get out fast enough. Trading, trading what instrument? Close button. It cost you, did you make money though? Did you make money? Now, I don't have to tell you because you've been here for years. The reality of the close button, it gives you one of the worst possible fills to get out. That we know. Oh, the one instrument I did not look at, and I'm looking to see 10 o'clock. I don't think, now, Langford always sends me messages, and I want to see if he said anything. He had a profit with the YM in a prop account and had the same terrible gold prop account trade. So I think there's no question gold was a problem on prop accounts, but it seemed to be okay on cash accounts. So the one thing you can do that we talked about to avoid having to use that close button is if you utilize that feature, if you get the right setup, okay? If you happen to set it up properly and you use the feature, if the market moves X ticks, move my stop to break even plus X ticks, that can prevent you from having to hit the close button. However, sometimes, you see yourself in profit. You know the market's moving so fast that you feel like the trade's out of control, so you try to hit the close button to get out with a profit. That's not a crazy thing to do. It's not a crazy thing to do. Yeah, sometimes orders will stay on when the market moves as fast as this market moved. Sometimes we do get what I call them spurious orders, orders that are placed, but they're not actually real orders. They were never sent to the exchange because possibly the stop was on the wrong side of the market when the software tried to place it, or you were actually out of the trade. But almost always just rebooting will get rid of those. You just always want to make sure. The one thing you always want to be careful about is a haywire trade. What do I mean? A haywire trade. It's very uncommon, but it can happen where you get put into a trade after you think your trade's over. You always have to watch. Make sure that you watch your chart trader so that you make sure that you're not in a trade unexpectedly. Sometimes in an ultra fast market, it could fill your orders and leave you in a trade. And the reasons for that are because sometimes everything doesn't get filled at the right time, but it happens. You just always want to be aware of everything that's going on around you with a trade. In a haywire trade, you'll often get multiple messages. Always close the error messages. It's the first thing you want to do in a trade that's not working out. Close your error messages because very often you can't do anything else when there's error messages on the screen. So always close those error messages. Okay? All right. I want to thank everyone on YouTube. We had a very nice crowd. If you hit the like button on your way out, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks for coming, and hit the notification bell also so you know the next time that we'll be streaming. We will be streaming again this week. So I'm going to close